A little bit of background. No, that's going to drive me nuts. Oh well. All right. Well, I think everybody that is going to be here is probably here by now, and it seems like everybody can see me. I think I'll try to select some of the music, maybe some of the Native American music I use in the 12-step meditation series I've been working on, and kind of put that in the background on Wednesday. In the meantime, oh, Sarah is asking to join. Let me see if I can see her request to join. Diane, you invited a lot of people. Let's see, suggested do it this way. That's really weird. I'm not seeing. The only Sarah I see is a Sarah Himmelgarn. I don't know why. Well, maybe by the end of the week I'll get the hang of this place. See if I refresh. Oh, there she is. And there she is. Okay, I've got it, Diane. I just approved her. She should be able to refresh her page and hopefully see the video then. So we'll see how it goes. Wow, 23 minutes and we haven't even started really talking about anything yet. So I guess Sarah, since Diane was trying to get you on, if you'll let me know that you're on, we'll go ahead and get started. Oh, not a problem, Diane. So I am trying to respond to the messages as they come in. I'm not exactly too tech savvy when it comes to being on this side of the camera. I'm used to, of course, as most of you know who know me personally, I'm used to actually having a group of people to talk to. So this will be a different experience for me for sure. Hopefully by the end of the week I'll get a little bit more fluent with my setup here and be a bit more prepared. And hopefully by then we'll get the links all straightened out to where it'll be easier for everyone to know how to log on. And just for future reference, I am recording this. For a couple of reasons. One, of course, because I know that there was a few people that signed up that let me know, specifically asked if I was going to be, showing this afterwards because they weren't able to be here live. So absolutely, I am planning on recording it and making it available afterwards for anyone who missed it, or if for some reason you feel like the content is good enough to want to reference it later on. Also, another reason is because, anytime you do something like this, your first time around is always, the hardest. And I find it interesting to hold on to old speaker tapes, showing my age there. And I'm curious to see what I end up being like with this if I do this a few times to get better at it, and be able to come back and look at this and see the improvement. So it's kind of like going back and looking at something you wrote several years ago, and so I'm wanting to record it for my own purposes as well. But if you want a copy of it, or if you want to share this afterwards, I am going to try to make this set up to where we can go share it with other people afterwards. But in the meantime, tapes. In the meantime, let's go ahead and get started. So today the main thing I'm working on is a breath that if you read my email, this is a particular breath that is specifically designed to help with anxiety and going into rather uncomfortable situations. I use this same breath before I share in any group setting, before I go into a business meeting, and even tonight before starting this, I've been having to work on my breathing for the last 24 hours as we've gotten closer and closer to doing this. A little bit about why breathing to me is important, why breathing should be important to anybody. In recovery and being familiar with 12-step fellowships and stuff, it's very common for us to run into each other who are more than just dealing with the obsessive compulsive desire to use, but we're also dealing with how many of us are known to be titled dually diagnosed, which is a term I really don't care for myself. However, it's become very common to hear in meetings and stuff. Even for those of us who are not dually diagnosed, so many of us beat our bodies up, whether we're alcoholics, drug addicts, or even the average person. Stress alone, as we hear it all the time now. We hear it in news articles. We see it in blog posts. People are writing about how damaging stress is, and how damaging the adrenaline rushes that we tend to kind of lean towards. How many of us have watched horror movies for the specific purpose of feeling that elevated heartbeat? All of those responses, those put stress not just on a mental level, but on a physical level also. On average, the average person breathes approximately 23,000 times per day. And there are two basic branches of our heartbeat, or our cardio system. There's the sympathetic, which is the basic fight or flight response, and then there's a parasympathetic, which the parasympathetic is the rest and digest. The sympathetic, of course, is when we accelerate our heart rate, when we're late to a meeting. How many times are we running late to go to work, or running late to get somewhere, and it's not just being late that is affecting us. It's that whole mindset, that whole process of, we're building up in our minds how other people are going to react to us when we show up late to something. And so we are kicking in that flight or that fight or flight response before we even get to our location. Our heart rate's already elevated. And when our heart rate's elevated, when we kick into that fight or flight response, our breathing becomes very shallow, becomes very sporadic. And that puts a total weight down on our whole physical system. It affects everything from our blood pressure to our digestive system, to our immune system. David G., which is a gentleman that works with Deepak Chopra. He's one of his leading meditators, and if you ever get to listen to David G. on any of his seminars, and he talks about the same breathing techniques that I plan on talking about, at least 2 out of the 3. But he tells the story. He talks about how in the early days of our survival, when we would see a lion, we would go into that fight or flight response, and suddenly we're gone. We're running, or we're in that survival mode, and our heart rate jumps up, our adrenaline jumps up, and in doing so, in order for our body to compensate for the sudden rush of blood being pumped through, it starts reserving energy from other areas of our body. It starts reserving energy from our immune system. Our body starts saying, look, I'm either going to survive this or I'm going to get eaten. And if I'm going to get eaten, then I don't need that immune system. So I'm going to shut that down and put that energy into running, and into breathing. And it's a continuous cycle. And today we're constantly feeding ourselves with stress. We're constantly feeding ourselves with the fear of what ifs. I know in 12-step recovery we talk about one day at a time, one day at a time, one day at a time. But even in a 24-hour period, we have a tendency to start projecting, over the next hour, next couple hours. If we're running late to work in the morning, we start projecting the consequences of being late. If we're walking into a business meeting with a new client, or even an old client, or just with our boss, we start projecting. When I went through a very devastating loss that some of you are aware of, especially if you've read any of the writings, any of the blogs since I started Journey in Principles. Journey in Principles was started as a healing process for me from a loss of a very close individual to me. And I remember there were days that I would be sitting here in my office. This office that I'm in right now, it's 2 buildings away from what we call the creative office, which is where the owner and the boss is. He's the creative person. Our job here, which is why my office is always somewhat of a mess, is technical. We do the actual work. But I remember after that loss, and I was in that real angry state and that real resentful state, and I was lashing out, and I was always looking for what was wrong with everybody around me. I remember getting called down to the other side, and as soon as I got that call from Brian, my boss, to go down to the other side, I automatically started running through my head all these different scenarios of what was going to be wrong. I automatically went to what was the worst case scenario? What I do wrong? Was I missing something on a show? Did I forget something on the last show? I just automatically went to the worst case scenario. And so by the time I got down to the creative office to meet with Brian, I was already built up into that defensive mode. I was already ready to go in there, and you know what, I wasn't going to put up with anything. And if he gave me any grief over any of my job performance, that was it. I was just going to lash out. I went in there with my walls up. I went in there defensive. And it wasn't until I came head to head with, all of a sudden, with work, with my club that I ride with my marriage, and honestly, when I lashed out at my kids, which if you ever hear me talk about any of my kids, my kids are amazing. They really are, especially compared to my past. Something happened to me in 2015 that triggered a change, and I got back into my meditation, and one of the first things that I got back to was the basics of breathing. I'll go more into why breathing personally is so important to me, and the spiritual relationship I have with breathing on Wednesday. There's another breath I want to teach on Wednesday that is one of the first ones I learned, and I'll go more into my own personal history with breathing itself then. But I learned from that experience of what was going on with me in 2000, between 2012 and 2015, that we put a major toll on our bodies every day when we get into that mindset of the what ifs, when we start worrying about what's about to happen. And when we get ourselves wrapped up in what we've lost, when we start dwelling on the past, there's many different articles out there by many different people that all say the same thing. Anxiety rests in the future. Depression exists in the past. And the best solution to facing our anxiety or dealing with our depression is to work on bringing ourselves back in the present moment. And that is, to me, that is more than just a 24-hour period. For me, being in the moment means right here, right now, this moment. The guys that I have worked with over the years and helped with their recovery and with their grief and stuff, they've all heard me say, be where your feet are. And with me getting back to basics, and when I say back to basics, I mean back to the core of breathing, then it's really about be where your breath is, because this is the only breath I have. This one right here. Now it's gone. Now I have another one. And that's really being in the present. That's really being in the moment. Getting back to the two branches, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, we hear a whole lot about the sympathetic. Anytime we hear people talk about the fight or flight, they're talking about the sympathetic response. And, that fight or flight is all stress driven. It's all fear driven. And it does. It takes a complete toll on our body. It starts telling our body to shut down everything else and just focus on that survival. And today we don't have lions chasing us unless you work for the zoo, or in Africa or someplace like that. That's my attempt at humor. But we do have that constant stress, and we volunteer for stress. I started talking about horror movies earlier. so many of us find being scared entertaining. And there's so many times that we put ourselves in situations voluntarily to cause that fight or flight response, and we get some form of rush out of it. And maybe it's just well, thanks, Michael, you laughed, I appreciate that. Maybe it's just because that's what's familiar with us. We grew up stressed. We grew up with our parents being stressed, and that stress gets carried on to us. And as we went through our when we went through our desert, through our valley, through our history, through our bottoms, trying to get out of that and trying to repair and rebuild after that realization of the damage we've done, it's real hard not to stress. Our stress is tied to almost everything we do. And here's the thing. When we're in that fight or flight response and we're doing that shallow breathing, there's a guy that does a TED Talk, Joe DiStefano. He has a TED Talk out, and he talks about the average of 23,000 breaths per day. And he makes the comment that you can exercise every day, you can eat a healthy diet every day, you can get the right amount of sleep every day. But if you're not breathing properly, then that's like junk food to your lungs 23,000 times a day. Another point that he makes, and so does David G., and so does just about anybody else that you hear talk about breathing, they make the point that the average person can go 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water. But the average person can't even go 3 minutes without air. It's the one element that completely connects every living creature in some form or fashion. We're all connected through it. And I'm starting to get off into more of what I want to talk about Wednesday on that. But when we start to learn to breathe properly, and then we start to trigger that parasympathetic response, and that parasympathetic response, that's the rest and digest. So when we learn to breathe properly, that means that we're breathing deeper. We're bringing the air deeper into our system. We're bringing the air fully into our bodies, and we are balancing out the CO2 and the oxygen, and that helps our system to rest and digest. It helps our system to balance itself out. It helps our system to heal itself in a multitude of ways. When our breathing is dysfunctional, it's shallow. It's held higher in our lungs. The exhalation is also short, letting out very little of the toxins. And it causes poor oxygenation in our system. One of the basic techniques that is taught in many different forms of visual meditation is visually envisioning your breath as it goes in and out. And what they teach you is as you breathe in positivity, breathe in clean air, breathe in white light. It depends on what style of meditation you're going with. But in almost all of them that talks about visualizing your breath, the point is you're supposed to breathe in the healthy air and breathe out the toxic air. And we've all been taught that that's basically what we're doing. For us, we breathe in oxygen, breathe out carbon dioxide. The trees they do the reverse. It's the reverse for them, or plants or whatever. But if we're breathing shallow, if our breathing is very shallow, then we're not taking in much oxygen, and we're not really able to push out much of the carbon dioxide. So we're not getting that cleansing, that filtering in our lungs. All of this is all attributing to, low energy, bad blood pressure. Once again, as I stated earlier, digestion, ED for us guys. It contributes to everything. So the whole point, the main point that I really wanted to stress on this first day is just how vital, health-wise, and you can look it up yourself. I mean, I could go on for several more minutes at least, and thumb through more and more notes that I've taken over the years of just how important breathing is, and learning to breathe properly, and how we can use our breath. There are so many different ways to control our health, our body, our temperature, our heart rate, through breathing. Just through changing our breathing. Think of it this way. When you breathe in, or start to realize this is what I would like to ask you to do, especially over the next 24 to 48 hours, because I'm going to go live again on Wednesday. I'm going to give tomorrow a full day. I want to give everybody who does see this and hear this, give you a full day to kind of absorb some of the information and practice some of this and think about this throughout your day tomorrow. But by all means, come on to the Ask It Basket page and comment and share what you're experiencing and stuff. But I want you to start recognizing, start thinking about, when you breathe, are you breathing in through your nose, or are you breathing in through your mouth? Are you breathing in with your lungs, or are you breathing in with your diaphragm, your belly? And is your breath shallow? Is it deep? How are you breathing? Just start becoming aware of it. Start thinking about it. I know when I was younger and before I started learning about breathing and stuff, I had to teach myself how to breathe on a more natural basis in through my nose, because when I was a teenager, I walked around with my mouth open and I was a mouth breather. I had to learn how to breathe in through my nose, and getting back to the importance of how we're breathing in clean air. Our nose was specifically designed to filter the air. So breathing in through our nose, we're cleaning the air as we breathe it in. And I know for a lot of us that's common sense, but sometimes we have to rehear what should be common sense to us and remind us of some of these simple little facts. So as we breathe in, if we breathe in through our nose, we're cleaning the air. If we're breathing in through our mouth, there's nothing there to filter it. So we're breathing in all the pollutants that are in the air as well. Plus, once again, if you breathe in through your nose, then you're going to naturally take a deeper breath. If you breathe in through your mouth, it stays up high, it stays shallow. So that's why anytime you get into any type of meditation or anybody who teaches you breathing, there's a couple of exceptions, and there are a couple of breathing techniques that specifically require breathing in or out through the mouth. But for the most part, almost all breathing techniques, any yogis that you talk to, anyone you know that does yoga, they all talk about breathing in through the nose. And for the most part, breathing out through the nose. And that's why. It is so that we breathe in that clean air. I think that's enough of some of the scientific studies behind breathing and stuff. You can go into a lot deeper research. Like I said, there's a TED Talk, and I did make a note of it here. There is a TED Talk by Joe DiStefano, Distefano. It was done on April 2016, and it's all about breathing and the importance of breathing. And he gets into a lot of really in-depth information on why learning to breathe properly is so important. And he talks about the sympathetic response and the parasympathetic response. The breathing technique that I want to show you tonight is I've heard it called the box breath is what I'm most familiar with it being called. David G., who I mentioned earlier, he calls it the 16-second breath. It's also, I've heard it called square breathing, but it's a very simple breath. It's a very easy breath to learn. I find it's very useful to be one of the first breathing techniques to put into your toolbox of air, or however you want to word it. That was kind of corny, but it's also specifically a breath that is used as a pause or an interrupt to your mood, to your emotions. Like I said in my email earlier, this is a specific breath that I personally use anytime I have to walk into a meeting with clients, anytime I share in a group setting, and I think about it. Sometimes I get caught off guard, and I don't do it before I start to share, and you can tell the difference. You really can. I used it today, before hitting that go live button, which maybe some of y'all that may have tried to log on earlier, it was a little delayed, and that was because I was taking that moment to bring myself into the moment. It's a wonderful breath. I use it quite frequently, and it's so simple. And if you would indulge me at this time, I want you to try to practice this with me for a moment. All you're going to do is, to begin with, just let out all the air in your lungs. Exhale as much of the air as you can out of your lungs and let it all out. Just one big breath out. Just let it out. And then as you breathe in, you're going to breathe in slowly through your nose to a count of 4. 3, 4. Hold your breath for 4, 2, 3, 4. Exhale slowly, 2, 3, 4. Pause, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Pause, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Pause, 2, 3, 4. Inhale through nose, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale through the mouth, 2, 3, 4. Pause, 2, 3, 4. And then just breathe normally. And I was already in the middle of the counting, and Belinda asked, about breathing in or breathing out through the mouth. Different people will say different things as far as the box breath goes. Most of your, if you learn it through someone that does yoga, they'll typically always say breathe in and breathe out through the nose. For me, when I do the box breath, I breathe out through the mouth. I want to breathe out those toxins. I don't want, and it's kind of it's kind of a visual thing with me. There are certain breaths I still breathe out through my nose, and like when I'm doing, believe it or not, I do attempt yoga every morning, and mainly because it is a very breathing, meditative way of getting up and moving in the morning. I do try to breathe out through my nose. But for the most part, on this breath, especially because of why I use this breath, for trying to keep my intensity down, when I find myself in a situation that's starting to get a little stressful, I breathe out through my mouth. I always feel like if I'm breathing out through my nose and I'm doing it in a forced way, then I'm kind of trapping some of those toxins, because I can be a very visual person. And, I can, after so many years of being told visualize clean air going in and toxic air coming out, I picture that toxic air going through my nose and getting trapped by the little filtering, nose hairs and stuff. And so I personally prefer breathing out through my mouth. But it's taught either way. It's what is going to calm you the most. The point is, the box breath or square breathing, it truly is, when done properly, or even when it's not done perfectly properly, it's almost immediately calming. It almost immediately slows your heart rate down. I usually try to do the same box breath. I usually try to do it at least about 12 to 15 times. Starting out, getting used to it. Just do it a few times. One of the seminars that I did get to experience with David G., he only did it twice. He did it twice, and he did it before he told anybody what he was really doing with it. And he did it to show anybody that they can meditate for at least 32 seconds. Because that's what he did. He did the what he called the 16-second breath, which is the box breath, 4, 4, 4, and 4. And after everybody did it, he was like, now you have meditated for 32 seconds. And that was his whole thing. So it's really up to you as far as whether or not you breathe out through your mouth or not on this one. I do. I breathe out through my mouth. So it's in through my nose, hold for 4 seconds, out through my mouth, hold for, and then pause for 4 seconds, in through my nose. And it's an immediate pause. Anytime that anxiety kicks in, anytime you're starting to feel your fear kick in, I only believe in two emotions, and that's love and fear. And anytime that fear seems to be outweighing that desire or that love, this breath allows me to go forward regardless of the fear. You'll never hear me, I don't think you'll ever hear me say that fear is a lack of faith. I use my faith to walk through my fear, and this breath brings me back to my faith. It brings me into the moment. The reason why I think the square breathing is so powerful is because you cannot do it without focusing on it. It balances out your breathing on a repetitious cycle, and it brings you into the moment. So for however long you do the box breath, you're in that moment, right here, right now. So yeah, with that, I say, try using this box breath, throughout your day, tomorrow, the rest of the evening. Let's see. Yeah, Belinda, like breathe in God and breathe out Belinda. That's very much, you'll hear something very, very similar to that if you're here Wednesday. I'm going to get very much into why this became such an important part to my existence. Really, I don't want to just say my recovery, but who I am as a person. It's not what goes into a person's mouth that's dirty, it's what comes out of a person's mouth that's dirty. So allowing the air to come out of the mouth is perfect. That is perfect, Michael. Thank you. Belinda, it wasn't easy for me to do at first either, and that's why I said the first time, until you get used to it. Now, when I do it, I usually do it about 12 to 15 times. But I find that even today, if I only do it, 2 or 3 times, it still brings me into the moment. At the very least, it brings me right here into the moment. It's not that easy of a breath. To learn it first, getting used to counting while breathing and stuff. But it's very effective, and it is very simple. And as we are learning nowadays, simplicity is not always the easiest, but it is usually the best. None of the breathing techniques I'm going to get into this week, none of them are going to be extreme breathing techniques. There are some very extreme breathing techniques out there that take a lot of practice to really build up to and work towards. None of the ones I plan on sharing this week are like that. They're 3 of the simplest, most effective, yet easiest breaths to practice and exercise with. Exercise with it. So for the next 47 hours now, I guess, focus on 3 things. Focus on, number 1, recognizing how you're breathing, as far as, are you breathing in and out through your nose, or throughout the day are you breathing in and out through your mouth? Number 2, are you breathing shallow, or is your natural breath a deeper breath? And number 3, whenever you think about it, you don't have to wait until an intense moment comes up, but whenever you think about it, take a moment and pause in your day and do a square breath, do a box breath, even just once or twice at a time, and just practice it. And see how your day goes tomorrow. See if you can tell the difference just between how your day was today before thinking about your breathing, and how your day goes throughout the day tomorrow. And how I'm really interested to hear, for you, if you can notice any difference between today and tomorrow. And just practice it. And like I said, by all means, if you're about to walk into an uncomfortable situation, pause, take a moment, use the box breath before you walk into it, see what happens. If you find yourself starting to get into a heated situation, pause, take a moment inside yourself. If it doesn't matter if you breathe in and out through your mouth, or breathe in through out through your mouth or not, just make sure you're breathing in through your nose. That's the main thing. But pause, try this breath, bring you back down to calm, and then confront the person. But don't wait for a situation to come up. Whenever you think about it, just whenever you think about it, stop, pause, and try this breath. Once or twice, that's all it should take. The more you get used to this breath, the more you learn it, guess what? Then it becomes automatic. You find yourself in a stressful situation, and hopefully you'll automatically kick into breathing that box breath. The next thing you know, you're automatically counting internally as you're breathing, and then you realize, hey, I just calmed myself down. I didn't have to work at it. And that's the goal. That's the goal of this. Believe it or not, guys, for those of y'all who do know me personally, I do go through or have gone through my own battles with anxiety. And I use this breath just about every time before I walk into a room. That's just something I've done because I have always been somewhat uncomfortable, as odd as that might sound, around tight groups of people. And so this is my way of walking into a situation in calm. With that, it has been, I really didn't think I would be on here that long, but of course it took me a while to get things rolling tonight. But that's it for tonight. If you have any questions, if there's anything that I've, anything I've left open, feel free to shoot some questions in here. As you could tell, the Ask It Basket page is not decorated yet. I haven't created any back image to it or anything. I specifically set it up for us to have for this purpose to start off with, and to start a safe dialogue with anyone who later on may start getting into the meditation and stuff. So feel free to comment in here. Let me know if there's anything that I haven't touched on. If you have any other questions, I do plan on trying to get an email out to you tomorrow, just to kind of check on things and kind of remind you of the breath a little bit and make you think about it. And then we'll see you again on Wednesday. And until then, don't hold your breath. Have a good night, guys.